The Square Ball Podcast.
Welcome to the show. It's brought to you in association with Levi Solicitors, who will offer you not only a 10% discount on your legal fees, but, Michael, say the words.
Well, they'll give you 15%, won't they, on your wills, your probate, your conveyance, and your big three.
Yes, and how will the audience member find that out?
Using the code that is on the Phil Hay Monday Club.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
I reckon in another few months you'll have that nailed.
They better not change it.
Yeah, just when they've had enough of your shambolic delivery. Yes, the URL, have a look at levisolicitors.co.uk/the square ball. For your 10% discount, head over to the Monday Club for details on the 15% discount. It's Dan here, along with Michael and Moscow White as well, Daniel Chapman, who is waving at the camera, which you will see if you're on YouTube. If you're listening on the audio version, you will find it on YouTube. Moscow is now dabbing. Stop that. This is the weekly update show where we will go through the week's news. You been up to much? Quiet week?
Just looking at what's going on in the world, more or less. Peeping at it through my fingers. Yeah, I've quite enjoyed it, really. We've
also got the match preview, Man City in part 2. And then we've got heroes and villains towards the back end of the show as well. Part 1 then, this is the news. Been a busy week, yes, hasn't it, Moscow? Big Sam, we've had a statement from Javi Gracia. Messages from players about upset children that are not upset. Just
Victor Orta, who is upset.
Yeah.
People who are upset at the Victor Orta's upset. A lot of upset.
Big Sam seems happy. Well, not that happy.
He seemed. Yeah. I think the press conference was weird because I'd forgotten it was on, so I was catching up with it. And on YouTube, you can stick it, put it onto double speed, can't you? So I thought, I was 5 minutes behind. I thought I'll stick it onto double speed, then I'll catch up with it. But then it meant by the time I got to Big Sam at Big Sam pace, he sounded extra slow, which I think maybe changed my perception.
I've said that about you. I edit this at about 1.5 times speed just to save on a bit of time. I'm not used to hearing us speak at normal volume anymore, normal pace. It's wild. Did he sound like this?
Yeah, but is that how he sounds?
He sounded less perky than I've heard him in the past. I was impressed. Not impressed, I suppose it's the downside of having hired such a well-known person in the Premier League, is that Sky Sports immediately were on TikTok with an edit of his best moments. It's all Big Sam is back, with the soundtrack being Many Men by 50 Cent, which is quite I didn't really expect that all to be...
Is it a bop?
Clashing together. I wouldn't describe it as a bop, no. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure if people wishing death on Sam Allardyce was ever particularly his problem, but that's his comeback tune, according to Sky. But his demeanour in the press conference, maybe it's just, he said he'd got there at 7 and it was 4 o'clock when the press conference started. Is he, 67? Probably not being able to fit a nap in.
68, so, he mentioned his advancing years, but he's advanced based on everybody else in the Premier League, isn't he? He's up there with the best of them, as he phrased it. Words to that effect. Pep, Arteta. I mean,
Pep agrees.
Those comments were so daft. They were just funny, weren't they? And I mean, do you buy into the idea that he's done it just to take the pressure off the players and make it about him? You've got to do, haven't you? Really?
You've got to buy into the idea because the alternative is that he's mad.
Potentially, yeah.
I mean, in fairness, he could legitimately claim to be better than Arteta because he still hasn't achieved anything, has he? He's still not won anything. He's going to finish second this year, which fine, is good. But Ole Gunnar Solskjaer finished second, didn't he? And he's not a good manager.
Yeah, I think there's two strands to this. One is kind of shifting the attention onto him doesn't really work in his case because I think he has a profile, which is what I was getting at with the Sky TikTok thing, that kind of exceeds anything anyway. Him being Leeds manager has brought more attention onto Leeds United in general. It has that cut through with people who don't know much about football or don't really follow it, get in touch with you like, is that Big Sam guy manager of your lot? What happened to the Argentinian you had last week? Like, well, you've missed a bit.
Yeah.
So him kind of displacing the attention away from the players on him doesn't really work because his very presence brings attention onto the club as a whole. You could kind of sneak it all out with like everything that's going on under the radar and only in the football pages. This is the kind of thing that breaks through to main news, front news. The other part of it is that he's got Pep Guardiola agreeing with him. I don't know if this is the beginning of the mind games, but if you saw Guardiola's comments after beating West Ham last night, where he said, he is right. I want to be honest. Now look with what happened, for example, Neil Warnock in Huddersfield. It looks like now the young managers are there with the tactics or whatever, so they are really good. They help us with what we are. But look at the managers. Roy Hodgson for Crystal Palace. What they have done, they are really good. They have incredible experience. They know the game perfectly. And if Sam feels that, it's because of this. But then I'm
that
beginning...
strikes me as game playing, though. They're all just having a bit of a laugh, aren't they?
Well, yeah, he's saying the people who are 35, 40, 45, did we invent football or create football? No, football is already created and these guys belong to that. And they helped us to do it. So Neil Warnock, Huddersfield was in the last spot and now it's already out of the dangerous positions. And yeah, I do wonder about the mind games part of this where Sam Allardyce is saying, I'm as good as Pep and Klopp. And then Guardiola's going like, yeah, Neil Warnock's a good manager, isn't he, Sam? And so obviously when a Huddersfield play, I think they've got probably 2 games over the weekend, it's bank holiday, but they'll be playing soon. So Neil Warnock's press conference obviously is going to be Pep Guardiola was praising you. I was like, oh, well, I mean, Sam's a great guy. And, Sam's right with what he says about Pep and Jurgen, because, we were pressing back in 1975. So it's become somehow within a day of Sam Allardyce being here, he's rattled Guardiola's door and then he's gone and shaken Neil Warnock up. And at some point, Steve Evans is going to be chipping in, and I wouldn't be surprised.
I've got the words Evans Warnock written on a page in front of me.
We're going to be hearing from Darko Milanic soon. So everybody from the last 10 years is going to all coming out.
But you've only put that, Michael, because that's the name of your twin boys.
It is
Little Evans and Little Warnock.
Yeah, both middle names, Darko and Uwe, the middle names. Yeah, I do feel like Allardyce is almost completing a set. I know we did Warnock and Evans out of order, didn't we? But that sort of knows what they're doing. Traditional English manager, we'll call him.
Yeah.
We've gone through this. He does remind me of us getting Warnock in a way, because he's someone who I feel like for years we kind of laughed about getting him, saying, wouldn't that be terrible?
And it was.
And then we came to get him. And when he was appointed, everyone went, well, we'll see how it goes, I guess. He does have a decent record. And that's the thing with, I think the reaction to it has been mainly like, well, the other thing wasn't working. He's as well equipped as anyone we could legitimately have got at this stage to do this. And it's a hell of a lot of money as well.
Mm.
That's the other aspect.
But you lose a lot of money by not doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's £500,000, isn't it, that we've definitely lost in appointing him, which I guess isn't that much.
Here's the way to think about it.
1/80th of John Kevin Augustin.
If he comes in and he doesn't win a single point and Leeds don't score a single goal, he'll still get £500,000. And the other possibility, as we've discussed, is we could not win a single point and not score a single goal, still stay up, in which case he gets £3 million. So it's when he said that, oh yeah, it only took me 2 seconds to take that offer, I am not surprised. So it is desperate, and I think the size of that bonus and even the fee just to have him for a month speaks to that desperation. But it also is like the end game, as like you were saying about joking about, and I feel like people were joking as well about Frank Lampard ending up at Chelsea, like, oh, they'll probably get rid of Potter and just put Lampard in. Ended up happening, and it keeps, all these people who run football clubs, Angus Kinnear keeps going on about, oh, we can't have government interference in football. We all know exactly what we're doing. We're doing a great job of making a lot of profit from this game. And then really, like, the next time he's saying, like, honestly, we know what we're doing. It's like, okay, we'll talk us through that day when you went through your fucking contacts book and you couldn't come up with a better idea than giving Sam Allardyce £3 million. Like, that was the big strategic plan, was it? That's what you want to be left alone. No, we'll all be fine. We'll run the Premier League. Nobody needs to worry about what we're doing. Fans, don't worry your pretty little heads about how complicated running a Premier League club is. You just wouldn't understand what we're doing. That 10% on the season tickets, we'll be spending that very wisely. You don't, it's very necessary. Unless you really understand big business, you just don't, honestly. And then, like, the bit that really got to me about the press conference, both made me sort of laugh and cry, was when Allardyce was talking about Robbie Keane's coaching qualifications and said, we've worked together a lot at Soccer Aid. It's like, this is what we're down to. It's like, if I can get a song out of Paddy McGuinness, I can get Paddy Bamford scoring a few goals. It's like, Jesus.
How many weeks ago was it when we were talking about Sam Allardyce managing at Lucas's testimonial?
Yeah, not long. So it's come, and that's I was.
So does he know the club? He's managed at Ellen Road.
He's going to end up, assuming that this is all he does is these 4 games. He will have managed more Soccer Aids than Leeds United games when he retires. He's already done more Soccer Aids than the England job. But
well, yeah, it's a low bar though.
Get Angus Deaton up front.
Just talking about
Jamie Theakston in goal. Mellier's low on confidence. Theakston's never lacked for it.
Just thinking about like what you were saying there about Robbie Keane coming in, and the whole. There's first of all he knows the club energy, which is obviously very important, as Frank Lampard proves.
Still knows the stadium too. Thankfully, we've not developed it too much.
I was just going to say, it's funny how we've gone from a manager in Jesse Marsh who people said talked far too much, said too much, and was far too much about vibes and not enough about football. And we've landed up in a place about 8 or 9 months later where the best option is deemed to be somebody who says too much and has been brought in because we need vibes.
Yeah, they need a bollocking, basically, don't they? That's what it comes down to. They need motivation, which is, again, one of those mysteries of football, who apparently on Sunday, last weekend, the players were not motivated. And then this weekend, because Sam Allardyce is here, they will be motivated. That's how football works. And that's worth $500,000 straight away, is that they will be motivated on the one weekend and not on the other. And it's like the thing with Allardyce, he does have a track record. Well, he doesn't really have a track record. He has an amazing store of innovation, science, sports science, psychology. He's always been very forward-thinking, always been very into new technology and trying everything. I was reading some stuff about him from 2000, and there's mention of him using in training. The way it's written is tracking the players using similar technology to what tracks mobile phones. If you think 2000, nobody had mobile phones in 2000 anyway, and he's already got the kind of GPS tracking that we saw coming in the late 2010s with all the sports bras with trackers in. So he's 15 years ahead of the game in some aspects. But the problem with it, the two problems with him is that historically he's turned all that into this ultra defensive philosophy that he's always decided. Like his conclusion from all this forward thinking technology and everything he's done is defend, get rid of it, percentages, don't have the ball in your own half. So it's instead of some kind of discovering an enlightened way of playing football, it's kind of driven him further back into a 1970s style of like very old school, which is then his demeanour, which then leaves him wondering why people don't think he doesn't get the credit of a Pep or a Klopp. And it's, well, I do all the same technology they did before, but you've never really made anything of it. But the other thing is, none of that's relevant because we've got a month.
Yeah.
So all he can really do over the next 4 weeks is the motivation, the sports psychology, which maybe he has a good chance with because he was using a lot of that when he was at Bolton, even before when they were still in the Championship. And there's another bit on that. He had he was the first person to have a sports psychologist 24/7 in a club. Other people were using them on a part-time basis, but he had one as a full-time, always there. And they used to sit next to each other in the director's box in the first half, and it was the sports psychologist who would go down into the dressing room at half-time and write on the whiteboard what the key ideas were for the half-time team talk. So he was using all that, and that could be very useful over the next few months. But all the rest of it, it's going to have to be basic. It's going to have to be as dumbed down as possible. You're not going to be getting any real dramatic. And I think he said this in his press conference as well. It's like
it's not enough time.
Yeah, you can't change too much because you'll just confuse them. So you've got to kind of just get that extra 2% because 11 times 2.
22%, baby.
Yeah.
I had full head in hands when he came up with that, but I was thinking that's not.
But there's part of me that it goes back to what we were saying before, though. I believe he's almost doing this on purpose. He's almost doing it on purpose.
No, he just doesn't understand that percentage.
Maybe not, but just the whole shtick. just strikes me as make the narrative about him just so the players are not under the same level of individual scrutiny, and he can bluster through. It doesn't matter if he makes a bit of a cock of himself for a month, because he'll be gone in a month anyway.
I mean, it will have an effect. The cameras will be focused, as they used to be on Bielsa, because he's a name, isn't he? He's a bit of a star in a very different way to Bielsa, but he's like, Sky will love having him on there. Going, oh, Big Sam, he's coming back. It's like, well, he's like Warnock, isn't he? He'll be doing this still in another 5 years, won't he? He kind of touched on retirement, didn't he, yesterday, saying how he thought there weren't any jobs this year, and he was kind of not sure if he'd retired or not, and that sort of stuff. But he'll be back again for another stint. But yeah, having him there, it will distract people. Now, whether or not that has any effect on the way the team plays, I've no idea. I mean, you say he can't change anything. We did see when Gracia came in, we saw an instant change to use of width, and you do see these things like when Brian McDermott took over from Neil Warnock, we started passing it a bit more. And, you can make some fairly fundamental changes. How good the players are at doing it is another matter, because it might be that, okay,
that's the unknown, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. We're gonna try and we're going to change a few fundamental bits. But if you try to do that, but then, Luke Ayling is still pressing really high up the pitch when he's now being told to sit, whether or not he can do that, I don't know.
Yeah, we soon find out, yeah.
Just on the shtick thing, I think it is who he is. Because when I said there was something else about his championship days, I got a quote from him, 2001, sadly, because so he's famous for the Allardyce thing, I would manage Real Madrid if I was called Allardyce, not Allardyce. And 2010, he was saying, I'm not suited to Bolton or Blackburn, I'd be more suited to Inter Milan or Real Madrid. That's 2010. This quote, 2001, sadly, people like me are not the in thing now. You need to be Italian, wear sunglasses, drive a beautiful car, and know all about the beautiful game. And he's talking about why he's not getting one of the top 4 jobs. Bolton hadn't even got promoted at that point. He was still in the 2nd division going like, yeah, you've got to be an Italian to get one of the top jobs. You've got to have nice sunglasses. I think it is real with him. It's kind of this resentment that he's carried through.
He's got quite a chip on his shoulder about
even before he was in the Premier League, saying, why haven't I got one of the top Premier League jobs? Well, it's because I'm Allardyce, not from Dudley, not Allardyce. So I think you wonder, when you look at Warnock now, when he's doing he's started now that Huddersfield are almost safe, he's back to promoting his tour again. And you see these video clips of him doing his catchphrases, and we've talked about it before, about him becoming self-aware, but that does seem to have only happened since he retired, and then he got a Twitter account and a social media team going like, right, if you do your catchphrases, people will love it. It's like, what catchphrases?
Neil, roll. Right, well, let me tell you.
And I wonder if there's a similar thing with Allardyce, where it's like, it's real, but he's learned how to use it, or he knows that people. He's kind of
subverting it, the stereotype, if you like, a little bit by owning it.
But in the end, because one of the Allardyce thing, I think, is the one where he was like, and I'm saying that with a bit of tongue in cheek, because I know people will say that I always say this. And it's like, well, you can't really claim that this is being said with your tongue in your cheek when it's the exact same thing you've been saying for 15 years without your tongue in your cheek. So at some point there is a real, and how long did it take him to start getting into I'm as good as Jurgen Klopp?
Well, the only thing I was going to say on that, Moscow, is that he did end that point by saying, there you go, I've given you your headline.
He didn't end his point by saying that. He then waited 2 questions, and then halfway through, somebody asking a question about 5 minutes later was like, by the way, did you notice I gave you your headline before? Right. And so he's like, I was asking about something else. He's like, I gave you a headline. You all got your headline? It's like, yeah, I did fucking notice, Sam.
Yeah, I just wonder if that was maybe him overplaying it slightly, but also just pointing out the tell, if you like. This is what I did. This is my move.
Yeah, but then again,
but he's been doing it all along anyway, hasn't he? So
yeah. And okay, I don't know if he thought it was too subtle.
Maybe. Let's talk about subtle. Let's talk about Javi, because he's released that statement and he's done an interview with Adam Crafton at The Athletic as well. Comes across as a really humble, nice guy who's not had a bad word to say about anything. Maybe too pure for this world.
For Leeds United, certainly. We loved him, didn't we, for a bit? For like a month. And then it all went very badly wrong. But it's hard to have any... any actual bad feeling towards him, isn't it? It's
I think, is it Phil? We can pick this up with Phil when we speak to him after this for Friday's Phil Hayes show. But sort of saying he'll kind of end up being remembered as almost like a Cellino-esque appointment now because of the short-term nature of him being here.
Which should say more about Radrizzani and Kinnear than anybody else, really, shouldn't it?
Yeah,
they've descended into Cellino appointments rather than, and it's similar. You will regard him, or we will regard him in a similar way to Darko Milanic, where it's just like, yeah, Cellino was right. He was a good-looking guy. Seemed fine.
But he's been dead nice about it, and he's sort of saying how much of a privilege it is. Maybe we need somebody who is this mercurial, enigmatic figure, somebody like. I'm not saying somebody like Big Sam specifically, but in the way that Bielsa seemed to exist outside the club. Maybe that's just what it needs, somebody to come in and just not give a toss about all Leeds United's baggage. I don't know.
maybe. I mean, it did feel like the job wore him down very, very quickly with Gracia. I don't know if it. I think maybe it's just perception that to begin with we thought he was just a quiet man, and by the end he looked like
A weak man.
a beaten, weak man.
Yeah.
He has been fighting his corner, and he does have a point. He was doing it, I think, because of his general demeanour. And he was asked at one point where they said, "How are you so calm?" And he's like, "I'm not. I'm just being calm here. But actually, you know, the job is very stressful. I'm not sleeping. I'm doing it." And so, and he mentioned it in a couple of the press conferences when I think he realised he was under pressure. And he says it in his interview with Adam Crafton as well. And he's got a good point. We got 11 points in my 11 matches, while Everton got 8 points, Leicester and Southampton took 6, and Forest 5. So everybody else, all our rivals, got fewer points with their clubs than I got with mine. And he made the point as well that we were 19th when he took over and we're now 16th. So he can look back on what he did and say, he was doing what he was asked to do, get more points per game, get us out of the relegation places, do better than the teams who were also down there. Fine. The problem was, and we know, you know, and you can't argue with the other side of it as well, conceding 6, 5, 4, not even looking like a performance, and then going up against Manchester City. Like, there's no real, like, if we'd have played against Manchester City the way we played against Bournemouth, it could have been 40, and then, you know, the getting more points than Everton. You know, we are still in that position where we could, I keep saying it, we could conceivably not win another point and still stay up. But just getting beaten the way we were getting beaten by the end was not on. But you can't really, you can't argue with the state of the way that we were playing and the number of goals we were conceding. But I think you also have to give Gracia his due for that argument and say, yeah, I mean, Everton have just lost loads. Southampton have been pathetic. Everyone's saying, oh, Nottingham Forest are doing well, they're getting out of it. They got less than half as many points as he did in the same number of games. So
you can't shake the feeling of momentum, though, can you, at this point of the season? And also, you look at the games we just had, and there were so many points available there. You look at Fulham, Palace, Bournemouth. These are all games where when you're down there, you think, okay, we need to be getting stuff out of these. Leicester at home, obviously, we did get something, but that's one that you look at and say you've got to win that at this stage.
We missed all the big opportunities, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. That feels the way this season's gone. We've missed opportunities throughout. We've missed opportunities to sack Marsh early and get someone else in. We've missed opportunities to just get out of it by beating Crystal Palace, by beating Leicester. So many easy ways that we could have just got out of this.
January, we had £35 million to spend on Rutter, and think if that had been, because I think one of the other ways that Gracia really suffered in the end is losing Tyler Adams, because you look at the way that the goals have been scored against us, all that's like waltzing through a non-existent midfield, and imagine the difference of somebody actually running to stop some of those things happening could have made in front of the back four, and that was Tyler Adams, and we were doing well before Tyler Adams got injured. We won at Wolves, but even there you saw when we stopped, we brought Rasmus on, he scored, but then going defensive, once Wolves put the pressure on, they scored 2, and again it's that area in front of the defence. Once the defence wasn't protected by Tyler Adams anymore, they really never looked like not conceding lots of goals ever again. So either Gracia is unlucky because Tyler Adams was injured and he couldn't foresee that, or maybe in January Weston McKennie was not the right midfielder to sign and Jorginho Rutter was not the right person to spend £35 million on, when perhaps you could have had Weston McKennie and somebody else as well. We could have really bolstered the midfield options to give us much more in there, because that's the one bit where I think Gracia came quite close to criticising what he'd come into, as he kept saying. It was like when Adam Forshaw was back on the bench, he's like, well, we don't have any central midfielders, so yes, I am happy that Adam Forshaw is back, because I do not have many options there.
Lads, can I bring you some bad news? The Bielsa party is over. That's what Garth Crooks is saying.
Has he been having one? Has Garth Crooks been just absolutely raging on a 3-year Bielsa party?
I've just seen a headline like Garth Crooks warns relegation is a real threat. The Bielsa party is over. Thanks, Garth.
Wow,
really on the ball.
Wow, this is news.
Let's just wrap up the other stuff then. And the 21s, overseen by Victor Orta. I think he was managing him at the time when this went spectacularly. But I'm being mean on purpose. Yeah, went to West Brom needing a point to win the Premier League Division 2 title and get promoted back to the top level. Blew it, didn't they? So it's playoffs.
Was there 10 minutes before the end.
Yeah.
It does feel a bit harsh to be, because there was that business with the basketball player the other week saying that there's no failure in sport. Michael Jordan played 15 years, won 6 titles. Did he fail the other 9 years? They were 10 minutes away from winning the damn title. So, and one lucky shot from about 25 yards out that guy. It was like the best effort West Brom had all day just went in. So I do.
We would be deliberately.
Youth football is
mean.
It is a mystery as well, because if we go up and some of the players who are currently in that team end up moving to the first team next year, like if we go down in particular, you think, well, it might be that Sonny Perkins, Matteo Joseph, Montero, these are people who are now in the first team, and then you have an even weaker team in the top division getting spanked every week. And is that good for them? And teams win that league routinely. There's in the top league, like teams that have won it in the past, and then no players actually turn into anything from it. It's just because they hoover up all good young players.
You wouldn't play for it, but in a way, the playoffs, assuming they go through them both, 2 wins at Elland Road, and you get a party at the end under pressure and with a crowd, it could be better for them than just winning the title with a draw at West Brom's. I think it was even Warsaw's training ground it was played at. Just somewhere in the Midlands with nobody there. So if player development is all about playing games, 2 more games, so they'll all be world beaters thanks to it. So that's the positive spin on all that. But you could say, like, poor old Archie Gray didn't look like he was getting up at the end of that game. He was lying on the floor crying, and you remember he's 16.
Part 1 of the show is done then. Stick about. We have our Man City preview on the way in part 2. Look at that. Look out for that in your feed, and Heroes and Villains as well on the way.
The Square Ball Podcast.